Hello and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about Sacred Heart education. You're probably watching this as a member of staff in one of our Sacred Heart settings. You have joined a family of 165 schools that began almost 225 years ago and today is present in 33 countries across 5 continents. There are 6 in our English network. Whatever your role at Sacred Heart, we see you as a Sacred Heart educator. Whether you'll be working in the office, the classroom, the kitchens or the school grounds, you have an important role to play in sharing the mission of Sacred Heart education. But what does that mean you're signing up for? Let's start by thinking about why there are Catholic schools in the first place. Perhaps you've come from a non-faith school and you're wondering about the purpose of Catholic education. Or maybe, if that's something you feel you know about already, feel free to skip ahead. Families choose a Catholic school for their children because they want their child to learn more about their faith. They see that the parish, home and school work together to help raise their child in their faith. Students will learn more about the Catholic faith, but they'll also learn about other faiths as well. They'll learn about the practices of the Catholic faith, how to pray and what happens at Mass, for example, but they'll also learn about the teachings of the faith, namely the teachings of Jesus, and how these should impact on the decisions that they make. These teachings are often called Catholic social teaching and are based on principles of human dignity, care for the environment, and social justice, all priorities needed in our world today. Your role as a teacher in a Catholic school is to support the ethos and mission of the school. You might be a Catholic yourself, or belong to a different Christian tradition or another faith. You might not have any experience of religious faith. Your work doesn't have to contradict or challenge your own faith. You are simply here supporting others in their faith tradition. And it's the responsibility of all the adults, not just the RE department or the senior leadership team. Some Catholic schools will have just Catholic students, and some will also have students from other Christian traditions or world faiths. It often depends on how oversubscribed the school is and on their admissions policy. Catholic schools have either been established by the local Catholic diocese or by a religious order. Some Catholic schools belong to a specific Catholic religious order. You might have heard of the Jesuits or the Benedictines, for example. Religious orders were started by a founder who had a particular calling by God to work in a particular way or with a particular group, such as the young, the poor, or the sick. Founders of religious orders often had a radical approach or interpretation of the teachings of Jesus and wanted to bring this approach to others. The earliest religious orders date back to the 13th century, and there are many religious orders who have founded schools around the world. The founder of a religious order is said to have a charism. This is a God-given grace that inspires the person for the benefit of others. The charism, which comes from a Greek word associated with the Holy Spirit, is like the driving force or energy of that religious order. You can see it in the motivation that sustains the mission and vision of the group and keeps it alive whatever setbacks may be faced. In addition to supporting the Catholic mission and values of the schools, adults in religious order schools are also tasked with sharing the vision, values and charism of the religious order, and that involves learning more about the founder and seeing them as more than just an ancient saint depicted in stained glass window. Seeing them as a person, learning about what inspired them and how it might relate to the times we now live in. This brings us to St Madeleine Sophie Barat, or Sophie as she's often called. Our story begins in a small town called Joigny in the Burgundy region to the south of Paris, France. In December 1779, Madeleine Sophie Barat was born, 3 months early. It's understood her mother went into labour as a fire swept through the town. Madeleine Sophie was small and weak, and it's said that the priest who baptised her shortly after her birth commented that another angel would be in heaven before the morning. Madeleine Sophie was educated by her mother and her older brother Louis, who was a priest. This already set her apart from many other young women of the time. Sophie grew up in the very turbulent times of the French Revolution and experienced great fear over the destruction of the churches and society as she knew it. At 13, she knew she wanted to become a nun and had considered joining the Carmelites, and her focus would have been on a simple life of contemplative prayer. At just 20, she met Father Joseph Barat, a friend of her brother's, who wanted to start a small group of religious women who could focus on rebuilding society through education. To bring Sophie to life today, it's helpful to know about the times that she grew up in. Not only do we learn more about her motivation, but we can also draw parallels with some of the challenges of the times we live in. She lived in a time when many religious orders were being thrown out of France and many priests were being executed at the guillotine. For Sophie to take up the suggestion of Father Barat took remarkable courage. In addition to the horror of the French Revolution, Sophie also grew up with a popular movement in Catholicism called Jansenism, which portrayed God as a harsh judge and humans as hopeless sinners who could never match up to God's expectations. But Sophie's vision was built completely on love. She saw God as completely loving and wanted to share the knowledge of that love with the young people she taught. In the century before Sophie was born, a French nun, Margaret Mary Alacoque, had had visions of Jesus, instructing her to tell others about the love in Jesus' heart. This developed into what is known as the devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which was the complete opposite of the trend in Jansenism. Every act that comes from God comes from love. It was the perfect antidote to the times in which Sophie grew up. She knew that humanity could only return to God through belief in the goodness of God and God's infinite mercy. This had to be revived in the hearts of everyone. This radical love could be seen in the image of Jesus with his heart boldly displayed. And so the Society of the Sacred Heart began, and at just 23 years of age, Sophie was chosen to be the first Superior General of the Society. Horrified by the events of the French Revolution, it would have been easy for Sophie to think about investing her energy and that of her community into fighting against those who were seeking the destruction of the Church. Her focus instead was on the future, on building a society from the ground up, that in the future could transform the world. It was for this reason that she wanted to focus on the education of girls and those from the wealthiest families. She recognised that women could have great influence within families, and that the families who made the decisions in society would be best placed to bring about the radical changes needed. Perhaps, it seems, to fly in the face of the values of a religious order to focus on the wealthy. But it's worth noting that for every wealthy school, a poor school, as they were known, or an orphanage would also be established, with the fees from the wealthy school funding a free education for the poorest children. Sophie's early arrival in the world had meant that she suffered from poor physical and mental health for much of her life. Her work was very demanding, but she always emphasised the importance of taking care of her interior life as well. She knew that it would be impossible to care for others if she gave them everything and didn't spend time in contemplation, rest and prayer. Another great example for us today, especially in education. By the time of her death in 1865, at the age of 85, the Society of the Sacred Heart had 3,500 sisters in 111 communities in 16 countries across 4 continents. So what's the message of Sophie for today? Every person is loved completely by God, just as they are. We should commit to doing something to bring about the change that we want to see in the world. In order to take care of others and fulfill the purpose God intends for us, we must also invest time in our interior life, in rest, prayer and contemplation. Our actions should set the best example to others, more than the words that we use. Our students need to know and learn so much more than just the subjects on the curriculum. Teachers in a school should love their students more than they love their subjects. They should be like parents to their students. These principles should pose no challenge to a person of a different faith, or indeed a person of no faith. We might find ourselves looking at the world around us and being anxious about so many issues. Together with young people today, we might be fearful of pandemics, climate change, war, poverty, extremism. Even on the most simplistic level, our young people feel intense pressure for perfection and high expectations for fear of rejection from their peers. The Society of the Sacred Heart and its amazing sisters have endured more than 2 centuries and countless challenges that have faced the planet in this time. They've helped, from evacuating communities from London during World War II to supporting those fleeing the war in Ukraine in the last year, from the Spanish flu epidemic at the start of the 20th century to the health centre and school in Haiti that the sisters are currently working in. Sophie's mission endures all of these places and times, and this should be a source of support and comfort in the fast-paced, changing times that we find ourselves in. So how do we translate Sophie's message for transforming society into our classrooms today? The heart is on the outside. It's all about relationships. There are 2 ways that we achieve this: the Formation to Mission programme and the Sacred Heart Goals. Formation to Mission is about actively encouraging our network schools to support staff in continuing professional development opportunities that allow them to understand the vision and mission of Sacred Heart education. In addition to these online resources, there are also sessions delivered in schools, network events, and opportunities to meet Sacred Heart educators from other parts of the world. And how do we articulate the mission? Here are some of the ways it's been articulated by some of the head teachers in the US province. Formation to Mission is helping the adults in the school understand their responsibility for delivering an education rooted in Madeleine Sophie's vision that a school can be a home and that when young people feel loved, they learn. The mission of Sacred Heart education is to form children and young people in such a way that as adults they navigate their future with conviction and compassion. It's about making the love of God known to others. It's about taking our students where they are and helping them find their gifts and talents that they can go out into the world and affect change. When visitors have a tour of a Sacred Heart school, and it doesn't seem to matter where in the world you visit one, they will tell you that it just has a different feel to it. They'll tell you it's hard to put into words what feels different, but they know that it does feel different. If we track back even 60 or 70 years ago, that unique feeling was down to the RSCJ sisters who worked in our schools as head teachers, chaplains and teachers. The lay teachers, those who were not RSCJ, didn't really have to think too much about the charism of the society or the vision of Sophie, because all of that was communicated to the students through the living embodiment of the mission in the sisters. You could go straight to the source every day to learn everything you needed to know about Sacred Heart. In the 1970s in the US province, it became clear that to make sure that Sacred Heart schools retained their unique character when there was no longer RSCJs working in them, it was going to be necessary to articulate exactly what a Sacred Heart education provided a young person. What was the goal for a child graduating? Beyond the academic, what did you want that young person to be able to share with the world? This question led to the development of the 5 Sacred Heart goals of education. A personal and active faith in God, a deep respect for intellectual values, a social awareness that impels to action, the building of community as a Christian value, and personal growth in an atmosphere of wise freedom. In our English network of schools, we focus on a different goal each year with network-wide projects and activities. The goal will feature in prayer and worship, and students will be encouraged and rewarded for developing this goal in all aspects of their school and home life. It's not, however, just something that's the responsibility of the chaplain or the head teacher, or even your goals coordinator. Everything that happens in Sacred Heart schools focuses on relationships, and there are opportunities every day to notice where the goals are being lived out. A sixth former, moved by the cost of living crisis, who organises a food bank collection, is living out the goal of social awareness. The group of Year 4 parents who volunteer to come and show the students how to pray the rosary are living out the goal of faith. And the form tutor who encourages the quiet student to sign up to book club is enabling her to develop the goal of personal growth. Even, maybe especially, the NQTs who organise Friday night drinks at the local pub are building the goal of community for staff. That feeling our visitors have when they walk around our schools that could so easily seem to be something in the air is grounded by the goals. When the adults in the school enable the students to articulate where they are developing the goals, they're able to see school as more than just a place of learning. It becomes the home that Madeleine Sophie desired for her students. So thank you for all that you will offer our Sacred Heart School Network this year. We're so grateful to you and wish you and your students the very best for the year ahead.